Okay, I'm going on to do an experiment here, see how this goes. You are watching a YouTube channel called ForbiddTV, one that's not very popular, and I don't sometimes get a lot of listeners or viewers rather. And I'm going to go to my own channel while I'm talking here to watch my own channel, to participate, because I have had problems with my computer about being able to do this live on my computer. So at the moment, we don't have anybody that's jumped in and watching the live show, but we'll see how it goes. I may or may not leave this on for YouTube to watch later. You might want to fast forward. If you're watching this tape later on my channel, you might want to jump forward where I have some audience participation and get into a topic here. Okay, let's see. We have somebody that's joined us. Hopefully, I think I could expect about a dozen people to join us. Going to be opened. Yep. Okay. There I am. Let's go to I have to do this very strange. I'm doing this off of a phone. I do have an internet connection here with my computer, but my computer does not have the ability, for some reason, to have a Linux. It did, and I don't know what happened. I can't seem to get the permissions right to get video. So I will be able to. I see I'm on now. I don't have the volume up, but let me see if I got volume. Okay, I do have volume. Okay, I'm shutting it off now. So I do have video and audio because I had a problem with this last time I tried to go on. You're welcome to anybody that's joining us. You can open questions, open topic. I don't have a moderator. You can bring in whatever kind of topic you want in the chat. If you go in the chat there, you can type in anything, say hi. We can talk about whatever you want. I just got done with my live show on Liberty Tree Radio. And what I did talk about, and I could start talking about, maybe repeat what I did and see if anybody wants to join in on this, is I was talking about the problems we're going to have with our grid, our energy system, with what the greenies are doing. The green movement isn't really about the environment. It's about political agendas. They're using the environment. You can't be against the environment, right? You must love the earth that you live on. You can't be against the green. You can't be against us greenies because we're for the environment, don't you know? And in fact, what they're going to be doing is destroying you, your family, and your freedom. Because some of the things that are coming up, for instance, I'll throw a few quick things on here that I talked about last time, last hour on my live radio show. Let's see. I'm clicking on my computer here. My computer is trying to lock up on me. New York ditches gas stoves, fossil fuels in new buildings for the first statewide ban in the U.S. They're going to try to take away your natural gas stoves, your natural gas water heaters, your natural gas furnaces, your natural gas dryers. You're going to have to take away. They're going to take away all that. Hello. I can't see it very well. I have to get back on my. Somebody's there saying hi there. I can't see it too well. And also, 17 states weigh adopting California's electric car mandate, because by 2035, I think it is, California wants to force you people to get only new cars to be electric. Are we going to get are you going to get a grid there? Hey, yes, I'm here. I think you can see me. Hope you can hear and see me this time. I had a problem last time. I deleted that particular episode. Hello, people joining in. Yes, thanks. We're welcome for Open Topic. I've already started talking about, and because nobody was online here, I have a lot of topics on my show. I'm very much in the knowledge about our energy and our grid, alternative energy, electric cars. I've been doing solar and wind and electric vehicles for about 40 years. I know the topic, and I know the greenies are full of crap when they're telling you what they're going to try to do with the grid and with what I call ruinables. Not renewables, ruinables, because it will destroy our grid. You're going to be facing massive, exorbitant electricity rates. You're going to be facing energy shortages and rationing. And I didn't just say electricity, I said energy shortages and rationing. And you're going to be facing massive rolling blackouts if the greenies are successful in getting rid of fossil fuels like they've vowed they will do, like they've threatened to do, if they get rid of fossil fuels. Now, I'm all in favor of going cleaner. And if we can get away with fossil fuels, that's great, but we can't. And I've challenged people on both my radio show and everywhere. I've challenged people is you can't live off grid without also burning something. Or unless you live on the equator and you don't need anything to heat. If you can heat your food with the sun and all this stuff, you can have solar panels. You might be able to get by. But anywhere in this country, and I'm talking about the U.S. here, you're basically going to need, it's not doable. It really is not doable. Anybody who says they're off grid, examine what they're really doing. I need to get back to my sheet, the page where so I can see the, okay, now I can see the, because on my phone I can't see them well, but now I can see we have several people making comments here. No, I'm not in Texas. I'm in Michigan right now. I'm not in Texas. News about Russia and Ukraine. Yeah, there's a whole thing going on right now about supposedly a couple drones were shot down. The way I understand it from the mainstream media, so I haven't investigated the alternative media or other sources. Supposedly a couple drones got shot down that were supposedly heading to Moscow, and supposedly assassination attempt, and supposedly on and on. It's all allegedly, and allegedly Ukraine did it, and maybe they did, maybe they don't. Anyway, I don't know. In the fog of war, truth is the biggest, the victim. Truth, you never know what you're going to get when you get news about war, especially on the mainstream. They're loading a lot of crap into you about what you should believe about the war, because they've been telling us here in the U.S. that, oh, the brave Ukrainians and this former dictator is essentially, oh, now he's a great guy and he's a hero, and no. Look into it a little bit, and he's not the big hero. And the Ukrainian people are not, they're suffering and they're dying and they're running out of manpower and munitions. Of course, they ran out of munitions the first day of their war, and the rest of the world is propping them up so we can have our proxy war with the Soviet Union, shall we say? That's what we're doing here. We're having a proxy war with Russia. So if you want to talk about that, we can. I know a bit about that, but I don't know as much as I should or could about what's going on in Ukraine, because I've been filled with a lot of crap that's been thrown at me, because the U.S. has been trying to pretend like everything's great, hunky-dory, but I've been watching some other sources say they're in a lot of trouble. They're not going to win this war. It's inevitable that they're going to lose this war. And things are going out. So let's see. Analysis, they were trying to take down the flag on the Congress building. High winds blew it off, of course. Well, okay, whatever. That wouldn't be a reason to send maybe $1 million drones to take out a flag. That doesn't sound logical to me, but okay, whatever. Somebody's been telling that from a great source, supposedly. Okay, it's not something I would do if I was trying to either hurt Russia or kill Putin or whatever. I'm not. So anyway, somebody else wants to talk about Tucker Carlson. I don't have a lot of information other than what you have. I've seen some things. I haven't seen anything in the last day or so. I think he's been having bits and nuggets where he's actually spoken out, and apparently he's not saying much of anything as far as what Fox News did to him and what was going on with why he got fired. Because, yeah, if you don't know, Tucker Carlson got fired. He was the big mouthpiece on Fox News, which I will remind you is another mainstream media source. So don't get all hyped up about how Fox News is so much better news than CNN or all the other ones, because they're all funded by the pharmaceutical industry and advertisers and other corporate interests that pay their bills, and they can't say anything. With my channel, I'm on a channel here on YouTube and my radio broadcast where I have no monetized channel, I have no affiliate links, I have no sponsors, I have no commercials, I have no way to make any money, donate anything. There's absolutely no way that I make money on this channel. It helps my credibility. But the mainstream media, now, I'm not saying this is all necessarily bad, that nobody can make money, but when corporate interests get involved, all of a sudden it starts changing things. And Tucker Carlson wasn't able to say anything he wanted to say. I got into, thanks everybody for coming. You were bored? Okay, well, I might make you more bored, but here I am. The mainstream, I was talking about this with somebody today who's an older person, and we were actually talking about Conelrad, and a lot of you don't know what I'm talking about with Conelrad. And there were two spots of the AM dial where you can push to get emergency broadcasts dealing with, at the time in the 50s and 60s, we're talking about nuclear war with the Soviet Union. But anyway, Conelrad was two buttons on the AM dial, 670 and 1680 or 9, something like that. Anyway, on the AM dial. And now they want to do with AM radio, by the way. But AM radio, FM radio, it was all mainstream sources, all corporate interests. We were forced to believe what we were fed. We were talking about pirate radio stations also, about how some pirate radio stations have come about. But now with the internet, we're a lot freer to discuss what we want to discuss. But You talk about Joe Rogan, or you talk about Tucker Carlson. If he goes on with a podcast on the internet somewhere, which is kind of the likely scenario, he's going to have advertisers. He's going to have some sort of corporate interest. Look at Bill O'Reilly, who got left, or Megyn Kelly, who left, or Glenn Beck. Is that the right name? They all have sponsors or monetized channels, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Their hands are tied a lot too. You got to admit that they're part of the you become part of the mainstream media when you're taking money from, like, say, the pharma school. I don't remember the numbers, and maybe somebody can inform me on this. I don't remember. It's a pretty high percentage, something in the neighborhood of 30 to 40% of the revenue ads from the mainstream TV is from pharmaceutical companies. So that's why we can't say certain things about, those things that start with a V and the thing that starts with a C, the corny virus. We can't say certain things about that on YouTube because we'll get cut off, or on their sources, because it might have an impact on the pharmaceutical industry, don't you know? So because I'm tied here, even though I'm not making any money on this channel, and I don't have any way of making any money on this channel, my hands are tied a lot too, because the corporate interests of YouTube are forcing me to say things that are not allowing me to say the things they don't want me to say. Elon Musk, even though I don't always agree with him, he's full of a lot of hot air most of the time. This buying of Twitter. I hope Twitter stays to be a very popular platform, because he's made it freer to say things that we couldn't say before on Twitter. I don't go to Twitter. I'm not on Twitter, but it's already been found now, if you don't know, that government agencies were involved in trying to control what Twitter was censoring and filtering on their network, as Facebook is too. If you're on any of these networks, any of these social media, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, any of these, we're limited in what we can do, because we will be eliminated. My channel will disappear if I start talking about certain things all the time. We've got Rumble. I recently created a Rumble account. I have not posted a single video, but I went to Rumble for the first time yesterday, because one of the biggest liars because one of the topics I cover on my show is the fear mongering about Fukushima and about nuclear energy also. And the main liar on YouTube, Dana Durnford, the biggest liar on YouTube, he moved to Rumble. And it was only for a few days, and probably his revenue dropped like a rock. And so he came back, but he apparently, because I watched the titles, and I don't watch his videos, I watch the titles, and he was an instructional video how to go to Rumble. He was going to try to start doing his 5 times a week live show on Rumble. and he, within about 3 or 4 days, he was back. So his revenue dropped. And that's all he's about. That's all of them are about. They're about the money. They're lying to you on purpose. They're intentionally lying to you. They know they're lying to you. They're doing it because they know fear sells. And when we talk about Fukushima and nuclear energy too, and the greenies are lying about it all the time too. There's none of you, and I challenge anybody also, if the mainstream media have been telling the truth about nuclear energy for the last 50 years, that they've been lying about it and obfuscating and giving you false information about nuclear energy, if we've had the full scoop and honest facts about nuclear energy the last 50 years or more, we're talking a half century here of no growth because of the mainstream media lying about it. There would be no anti-nuclear movement today. Let me restate that. There would be no anti-energy nuclear movement today. Anybody can be against nuclear bombs, of course. You're not going to get rid of them, but okay, you can be against it if you want. But there would be no anti-nuclear energy movement in the world today if the mainstream media had been telling us the truth, because every single one of the memes you think you know about being against nuclear energy is very easily debunked when you start putting facts in front of you. People don't like that, but that's just the facts of the matter. I do a lot of things about nuclear energy on my program. Well, actually, I don't do much about nuclear energy. I just do a lot of debunking about the liars that are talking about Fukushima mainly. But I've studied nuclear energy. I think I only have 1 or 2 episodes about nuclear energy, actually. And I'm not necessarily pro-nuclear energy, but I am pro-electricity. I really I still like electricity, and I am addicted to electricity just like all the rest of you. And I do generate a lot of my own electricity with solar panels on 2 different systems that I have right now. So I do generate electricity and have battery storage, etc. But so I do like electricity, but I can't make a nuclear power plant in my garage. I know I know a couple people have, but no, I can't do that. So Germany 2 weeks ago eliminated finally shut down their last 3 nuclear power plants. They used to get 25% of their electricity, I should say, 25%, roughly 25% of the electricity from nuclear energy in Germany. Then they reduced it to in the last days when the war started, they were down to about 6% nuclear energy, and now they have now they're stuck because they vowed to close down. They actually extended the closure date for like 3 or 4 months because of the Ukraine war, but now they continue. The Greenies don't want to extend it more. They want to go through with this whole nuclear energy nonsense. So let me scroll this down a little bit here. So they have now eliminated their last nuclear energy. And what do? They have to burn more coal or more gas, natural gas, fossil fuels. The supposed goal was to go 100% renewables, but they can't do it. Nobody can do it. Here's something you need to understand. I'm getting on a tirade about it, but nobody wants to see me change the topic. So let's get into this if we want to continue with this. I'm on live. I don't know how long I'll be on live, as much as I want to talk or as much as people want to stick around or join in or whatever. Nuclear energy in the U.S. is only about, how much is it's close to 20% worldwide, and in the U.S. it's only about 10%. Our nuclear energy in this country, in the U.S., has been declining slowly because we haven't built other than the one in Georgia that just opened here last month or a couple months ago. We haven't had any new nuclear power plants for many decades. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission is responsible for this. The creation went from the Atomic Energy Commission to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. The Greenie agenda started showing its ugly head. And I'm going to post something here, and let me see if I can find it here. I'm going to try to do this live to show something to you, to prove to you, because a lot of people, hey, you're wrong. You can't be possibly serious. Let me see. Is that the one I want? Let me see. That talks about the waste. Well, let's do that one too, because I'm going to be talking about it at some point in this discussion here. I'm going to be presenting to you. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission has been purposely demonizing and making difficult for investors and making the safety regulations so extreme, making the regulatory hoops impossible for them to jump through to be able to get into nuclear energy. So they purposely made it impossible. And how do I know they're purposely demonizing nuclear energy? What I'm just posting here right now from, I just lost my scroll capability here. On the chat, if you want to check this out on the chat while I'm talking, I posted a link. And this is a government website. This is not some conspiracy theory, whatever. This is from the U.S. Government Accountability Office, .gov. Again, this is the United States here. But all countries, we're talking the same kind of agenda all over the world, folks. They're trying to convince you absolutely and 100% that one of the biggest problems with nuclear energy is the nuclear waste, don't you know? Ooh, nuclear waste, you got to store it for millions of years and it's going to kill you and blah, blah, blah. No, nothing has died from stored nuclear waste in world history. It's extremely safe. You can stand right up next to the casks. What high-level nuclear waste we're talking about here? There's different levels of nuclear waste. The one that everybody refers to when they say nuclear waste is what they call spent fuel rods. Spent fuel rods would still have about 95% of their electricity contained within them. It makes no sense to bury it, first of all. Burial is the last option, in my opinion, that should be even considered, because we could reprocess it, like France does, and many other countries do. Yeah, a lot of countries reprocess it, recycle it. And we could also use them in what they call fast breeder reactors or breeder reactors, where you can actually use it as fuel to make more electricity and further deplete it so it's not as radioactive. But no, we pull them out of after using for a number of years or however long they last, how big they are. You pull them out. There's these long things. They're about. Somebody's trying to text me, and I'm gonna have to ignore them. They're these rods that they pull out of the reactors when they change them, and they put them in these pools of water. Usually they have about 20 feet of water above them, and that's sufficient enough you can stand right above the pools. In fact, you can swim in the water, literally. The water is a great blocking of radiation. Well, anyway, they sit there in the cooling pools for 5 to 10 years, and then they put them in these dry cask storage, which is basically a big vessel that's very, very thick, usually made of steel, copper, and concrete, that they can, and they're virtually indestructible. They seal them in there until they can take them to a waste facility to bury them. That's what we're expected to do in our world today. We're expected to go bury them. Even though in the US, we could have been reprocessing them like a lot of countries do. Yeah, we could have been, but Jimmy Carter, back when he was president, decided, no, we're going to make reprocessing illegal because nuclear weapons proliferation, don't you know? So he put a ban on nuclear reprocessing in the United States. What did that do? All investors that were investing in these projects just completely lost all their money, scared away from it forever. Because Ronald Reagan came along and he pulled that restriction. So we could actually do it today, but who wants to do that? Because now Biden, he's so anti-energy, he'll put the restriction back on if anybody starts to threaten to make a recycling plant for nuclear energy. Yeah, that's what will happen. And that link, if you want to look at that link, and if you scroll down, this is proving to you about how the U.S. is purposely making nuclear waste to be an issue, that to pretend like there's a reason that you should hate nuclear energy. Because right away people are, what about the waste? It's completely safe, folks. Burying it is a safe way too, but it's the stupidest way to deal with it. It can sit in the casks forever. I mean, it doesn't harm anybody. You can stand right next to one of these casks where they're stored until they're ready to be. You can stand right next to it until it's ready to be put underground. And this link, if you scroll down, okay, if you're on the page, nuclear waste disposal is what it's called, the title of the page, issue summary. If you scroll down to where there's the first bullet point, I'm going to read the bullet point to you. If you're not there, I'm going to read the bullet point to you. Again, this is the U.S. Government Accountability Office. The nation has over 85,000 metric tons of spent nuclear fuel from commercial nuclear power plants. That does my own, I'm stopping reading here. My own comment, that's not military stuff. That's just commercial power plants. Department of Energy is responsible for disposing of this high-level waste in a permanent geologic repository, but has yet to build such a facility because policymakers have been in an impasse over what to do with this spent fuel since 2010. As a result, because again, me talking here in brackets, Yucca Mountain was going to be used was that in Arizona, Nevada? I think it was Nevada. Yucca Mountain was going to be the waste place for the United States. The waste, you can fit all the nuclear waste in the world, I think, in a football field size, one rod tall. They're like 20 feet tall or 30 feet tall or something, and fill up a football field, and that's all the waste we're talking about here. Well, a single coal mine or a single salt mine could easily fit all the nuclear waste in the world. But anyway, whatever. Anyway, back to the article. As a result, the amount of spent nuclear fuel stored at nuclear power plants across the country continues to grow by about 2,000 metric tons a year. Here's the next part is key. Meanwhile, the federal government has paid billions of dollars in damages to utilities for failing to dispose of this waste, and may potentially have to pay tens of billions of dollars more in the coming decades. If Congress were to authorize a new consent-based process for citing a repository, it could help break the impasse over a permanent solution for commercial spent nuclear fuel. End of quote. You realize what that said there? The U.S. government has been paying fines to the utilities, because when you pay for your power bill, we're talking the U.S. here, but it's similar in all the other countries as well that have nuclear power. When you pay for your power bill, part of what you're paying in the fees goes to the utilities to deal with the nuclear waste, to store it and to dispose of it. You've already paid for it. It's not like the government has come up with billions of dollars or trillions of dollars to get rid of this nuclear waste. No, it's already paid for. But the government is preventing utilities from doing anything with it. They won't let them reprocess it. They won't let us approve a fast breeder reactor. They won't let us bury it. Instead, we have to continue to store it in spent fuel pools or in casks, waiting and waiting and waiting. In the meantime, the federal government is paying fines. Do you ever hear the fear of the federal government paying fines to companies instead of the other way around? That's what's happening. The federal government is paying fines to the utilities for not allowing them to get rid of the waste. Isn't that something? And the proof of it is in the link. If you want to look at that link, You can bookmark it or whatever, look at it later. The link is appeared. If you're watching the chat, the link is in the chat to prove what I just said. I can counter any anti-nuke nonsense anybody comes up with ever, and I can do it live without a moderator right on this channel. Yeah, I don't have a moderator. If you watch any of the people who do this, the anti-nuke crap, they always have moderators. Because if somebody comes on and brings out real facts, they cut them off immediately. They ban them from the channel. I have no moderators here. Let's see what some of the people are saying. Yeah, to say something about the greenhouse gas emissions from fossil fuel. Yeah, I don't cover that topic on my channel. I'm avoiding that topic. There's still a lot of controversy about it, and I haven't studied enough to be able to come out and say global warming is fake, climate change is real, or whatever words you want to use. I've seen enough to know that there's a whole lot that we're being lied to about it. And I'm not in a position to be able to prove one way or another. I like to prove things on my channel. I don't like to make opinions and guesswork, because there's beliefs and then there's facts. I try to stick with facts because beliefs don't always fly well. Flywheel? In the case of energy, that's another method we can store energy. They don't fly well when you're trying to bring on a channel with truthful information and you're able to counter any troll that comes on the channel and thinks they're going to say something against the topic, try to claim you don't know what you're talking about. I have facts to back up what I say on my channel, always. And if I state an opinion, I'll say this is an opinion, this is not factual. I believe this, instead of saying something is real. So I don't talk about fossil fuels. What is renewable energy? Coal. Coal and natural gas are considered fossil fuels, right? They're not renewable. Well, no, they're renewable. The earth produced them and the earth continues to produce them. Not at as much of a rate probably as we use them, but it's renewable. Are wind generators renewable? Okay, the wind blows, but we got to mine all this stuff out of the earth, all the lithium, the cobalt, the nickel, the copper. Is that renewable? Because you can't have a wind generator or solar panels without all that stuff. Neodymium for the magnets. There's all kinds of toxic chemicals too. And did you know that the waste? If you're mad at me about the waste, about what I just proved to you, you also might want to look up something called Ochlogabon. I'm going to spell it for you here. Ochlogabon. I hope I'm saying that right. That's a place. And I better, rather than just putting that in there, I better put in for more proof. I'm not a fast typer. About nuclear waste. Ask Mr. Google about Ochlogabon. And I'm going to post this. The reason I'm doing this fully instead of just putting it because yeah, the people watching me now. But if they're watching later, they're gonna have to go and look and see. Okay, so Ochlogabon. I spelled it for you. Ochlogabon is a place in Africa. I can't remember what country. This is our 2 billion with a B, 2 billion year old nuclear waste site. Yes. We have proof of a natural nuclear fission reaction from nature that was produced some 2 billion years ago. And without any humans around to put it in expensive casks or to bury it thousands of feet underground, it didn't spread. It's there. It didn't. The researchers have found, when they found this site and researching it, they found that the nuclear waste, which is basically just sat there, didn't have a widespread contamination. It might have killed animals and things that were there at the time. I don't know if you can prove that unless you have the fossil remains of a lot of dead animals. But frankly, even if it was extremely radioactive there, the animal wouldn't die there. They would be exposed and they would go and they would die a couple weeks later if it was a lethal dose. That's kind of how radiation works. It doesn't, unlike what the movies show you, it doesn't kill you right away. If you get a lethal dose, it's going to take you a couple weeks to die if you get a lethal dose. But anyway, again, the movies. The mainstream media has been lying about everything nuclear ever since the start of nuclear. I mean, essentially, that's what it's amounted to. Somebody keeps texting me, I can't deal with you. I'm live on the air on YouTube. But they're probably not watching me on YouTube. So anyway, Oklahoma, look it up. Show you that I'm not lying, because you think the waste is such a big deal, and it's not. The nuclear waste is one of the best talking points the nuclear industry has. In all honesty, one of the best talking points we have about in favor of nuclear energy. But the greenies try to turn it around and make it look like it's the worst thing. It's the safest thing. There's a lot less waste of it. The waste from solar panels, some of the materials used in panels will last forever. Not just thousands or millions of years, forever remain toxic. And there's a whole lot more of that waste than there is nuclear waste, because nuclear waste is very energy dense. There's things the greenies lie about to you a lot about this stuff. Did you know that the greenies lie about the size of the plant? Let's take small numbers so you can understand. I could use megawatts and I could use terawatts, but let's say you have a 1,000 watt, which is 1 kilowatt. Let's say you have a 1,000 watt nuclear power plant. And then you have a 1,000 watt solar array. Actually, right where I'm sitting here right now, I have a 4,000 watt solar array above me, whatever. Let's say you have a 1,000 watt solar array, which would be about panels about maybe 10 foot by 10 foot, roughly. The solar panels on your roof. My voice is going. I get excited about this and I speak up, and I've been on the air for now an hour and a half on not only my radio, but this YouTube also. So that's how the greenies compare them. One kilowatt solar, kilowatt is 1,000. 1 kilowatt solar to 1 kilowatt nuclear. They're equal, right? Solar is a lot cheaper. That's what they keep telling you. Nuclear is way too expensive. It's way too expensive. No, it's actually one of the cheapest we have. Because here's some of the ways the greenies lie to you and twist the numbers on you. First of all, that nuclear power plant that was built, yeah, it costs a lot to begin with. But once the capital investment is done, it starts paying it off, and the fuel costs are very low compared to others. To get with solar is no cost for the fuel. But anyway, the fuel cost is low, and the plant lasts for what? 80 years? Maybe longer? Some say it could be 100 years. The nuclear power plants last a long time. Those solar panels, you got to replace them about after 20 years. They're only rated, 1,000 watt panels. So in other words, in the time frame of a nuclear power plant, you're going to have to replace that solar plant 3 to 4 times. So now you've quadrupled the plant right away, quadrupled the price of the plant right away, just on replacement costs. Okay, but it gets worse. It gets a lot worse. That solar array, 1,000 watts, is rated 1,000 watts. But however, it only produces 1,000 watts for about an hour on a day, only when it's sunny, and only when the panels are new. In other words, let's take the example in the US, if you were in Arizona and they have good sun there and no clouds in the sky, it will produce 1,000 watts only for about an hour around noon when the sun is at the highest, where you got the most exposure to the panel. Anything less than that, that's this curve. In the morning, it's nothing when it's still dark out, and it gets more and more and more, and then it peaks and then it goes right back down, big bell curve. So it's not 1,000 watts. In fact, they have something the greenies kind of ignore. It's something called night. It's kind of a thing, and you get 0 watts out of those panels at night. I don't know. It's the thing. I can't get any power out of mine at night. So slap the greenies around a little bit with that factoid also. Yeah, greenies, we don't get electricity at night from a solar panel. You might get them from wind, but wind is also very reduced at night when you look at the profile of wind. But let me go back to solar, because there's more. It gets worse. It gets much worse. So we're only getting 1,000 watts for that hour of the day. In actuality, even in sunny Arizona, we're using the Arizona example because it's one of the best places in this country to place a solar array. We need an array that's 4 times bigger than what you think to get the power, to get the energy production you think you're going to get by having a 1,000 watt rated system. You're going to need a system 4 times that size to get a kilowatt of actual kilowatt per hour when you spread it out over the 24-hour period to get the energy you think you're going to, because a nuclear power plant runs 24/7 at 1 kilowatt, right? It doesn't, unless you have to shut it down for maintenance or whatever. It runs it all the time, 24/7. Doesn't stop. And solar goes, whoop, whoop. You only get that 1,000 watts for an hour. The rest of the time is something much less, and half the day is 0. That's right. So not only do you have to replace the plant about 4 times to meet the length of a nuclear plant, you have to have an array 4 times bigger than you thought you did because the greenies are giving you lying numbers. You have to have an array 4 times bigger, and you have to place it 4 times more often than a nuclear plant. But it gets worse, much worse. That's right. In actuality, I'm here in Michigan right now. And I can show you, I can't show you the graphs because they're on my phone and I'm recording this on my phone. But anyway, I've done a video where I show some of these graphs because I show the production I get each day, each month, each week, each year. I can show the solar production. And it's actually in the wintertime, because that hour of the UK, you get about an hour of good sun. Now in Arizona, in the summertime, instead of just, because 12 hours is the average, right, of daylight versus darkness, but you're going to get more like, what is it? Off the top of my head, I don't really know. It's going to be like 15 hours of actual sun and the rest in darkness. But in the wintertime, it's reversed. You're going to get more like 7 hours of sun, 8 hours of sun out of that 24 that is possibly usable. So what I'm talking about is seasonal differences here. Seasonal differences. So, and I've done the calculation for here, me in Michigan. I would need to get the same amount of energy I get in this. Okay, how do I explain this best? I'll use the 1 kilowatt example, even though I got 4 kilowatts here. 1,000 watt example, you need something 4 times bigger to really get 1 kilowatt hour when I add it to hours and average it to the day. But in the summertime, here in Michigan, but in the wintertime, I have to have a system 30 times bigger than that initial 1 kilowatt array to get the amount of power, to equal the amount of power to actually get 1 kilowatt of electricity, 1 kilowatt hour of electricity for the whole month. That's right. 4 times bigger in the summer, 30 times bigger in the winter. Why is that? Less sun, more clouds, snow. This is just reality, folks. The greenies don't like reality. When you challenge them on reality, it's like all of a sudden they're screaming and running for the door. And that's why I can challenge anybody in debate. Any greenie, I'd love to challenge any greenie in the debate. A real debate where we're live and where they can't and they can't try to shove nonsense down my throat where I can get and bring up the facts. They would just have a hell of a time with it. They would be absolutely going nuts. And any candidate, if don't necessarily think Trump's the best candidate or whatever, anybody's better than Biden, right? Or Harris in the U.S., but whoever runs against them, if somebody would take a platform to prove how the greenies are wrong and go in live debates with them about it, they would eat up any of them greenies, absolutely eat them up, and still be able to present a case to show how you are for the environment. But the way they're trying to do it is guaranteeing us a grid that's going to be incapacitated and very, very, be a very bad grid. Again, we're addicted to electricity, folks. We need electricity. Okay, let's see. Okay, I can talk about other things here if everybody's don't like some people, do you have nuclear weapons if they are real? Why does anybody, sorry, I'm pointing in, why do people think nuclear weapons aren't real? I guess I don't understand this. So you're saying millions of people in Japan lied when they got attacked by a nuclear weapon? I don't get you. I never did get you people who go to that conspiracy theories that think nuclear weapons aren't real. Whatever. And then we can measure radiation after it and all that. I don't get it. Whatever. I don't think I even need to try to counter that, because okay, you watched a YouTube video where somebody's getting paid to say the stupidest things in the world. If I had a YouTube channel and claimed I saw Elvis in a yellow UFO, or Liberace was working at a Taco Bell, or some stupid crap like that, I'll get millions of hits. Because people like nonsense. For whatever reason, people seem to like nonsense. And fear sells. So if they start talking about nuclear weapons, that always gets. Nagasaki was firebombed. Okay, how does the firebomb bring all that radiation that was proven to be there? How does that happen? Firebombing is going to increase radiation. I don't doubt there's firebombing, but Does firebombing increase radiation tenfold, especially when they don't have any nuclear facilities or something nuclear that they're bombing to make spread radiation? How does that happen? Tell me your amazing science behind that. Also tell me, all you Fukushima believers that think we're all going to die on the West Coast. Somebody just asked a question about a radiological survey meter, which I may get into. Tell me how, because, oh, they're lying. Okay, I have more than 10,000 radiation detectors in stock. Tell me your amazing science of how they can lie to 10,000 radiation detectors. Tell me, I'd love to see your amazing science behind that. Show me how they're lying to me. And millions more worldwide. Tell me how they're lying to me. I really would love to find out how you think they're lying to me about Fukushima and how we're all going to die on the West Coast. I've been to the West Coast. I did 26 radiation readings on 26 beaches on the West Coast, all the way from Canada down to Mexico. I spent a whole week doing that and doing live radiation readings on 26 beaches. It might have been more than like 2 weeks. Up and down the West Coast, from Canada down to Mexico, with 2 Geiger counters live on YouTube, and I made a YouTube video of each one just to shut up the stupid trolls on my channel who thought we're all going to die on the West Coast from radiation from Fukushima. I knew it was nonsense before I even went on the trip. And I proved that it was nonsense. And so tell me how they're lying to my Geiger counters, or my radiological survey meters, or my dosimeters, or all the other equipment I have. Tell me how they're lying to me. I'd love to hear that. Anyway, I get excited about this stuff because I hate liars. And then somebody said he purchased a radiological survey from me and is debating on whether or not to calibrate it. How many rads do you think it? How many rad do you think it might be out of calibration? I presume is what you're saying. Okay, here's the basics on that. Radiological survey meter measures high-level gamma and X-ray radiation. A Geiger counter measures very low levels, beta, gamma, and X-ray radiation. Anything you're going to measure on a Geiger counter is not going to kill you, essentially, because if you get too much radiation on a Geiger counter, what they call the Geiger-Muller tube gets overloaded, saturated, and it'll reach 0. So if you get a lot of radiation with a Geiger counter, it'll just be dead. It'll say OL, or it won't work, or it won't do anything. It won't work. But a radiological survey meter, which is why I don't have one available handy to grab to show you, radiological survey meter is a little different. It doesn't have a probe. It's a unit you take outside, and it measures high-level gamma radiation. That's mainly what we're worried about with a nuclear event, is gamma radiation, because that's the most deadly, that's the most penetrating. Alpha and beta radiation aren't as much of a concern with a nuclear bomb type situation. It's the gamma radiation that can kill you within, like, say, an hour of exposure that you're really worried about. So to answer your question, a radiological survey meter is for high-level radiation. So with that being said, for civilian purposes, I don't necessarily recommend calibration for these things. First of all, it's going to cost you about $110 to get it calibrated. My customers can get a discount through KI4U if you want to look that up. 10% discount on calibration services only. Most all the equipment I have and all the equipment I've ever seen out there with civil defense, the old stuff, the last calibrations you're going to see on them are late 80s and early 90s, because they really haven't been in service at all since then, because, well, we have FEMA, don't you know? Why do you need this stuff from civil? Why do you need this stuff? We got FEMA. They'll come and bring you a nice Fallout trailer to live in, right? Oh, don't get me started. But the reason I don't necessarily recommend a calibration on a radiological survey meter is because they're meant for high-level radiation. And if you're getting any reading at all with a radiological survey meter, that's bad. You got a bad day. Get the hell out of there and get back into a shelter, because you could get a lethal dose within potentially, probably, if it's a nuclear a bomb or something, within hours, you could get a lethal dose. If it's a nuclear power plant, the needle won't even go up if it's melted down, unless you go in the containment building, and then you could get a lethal dose within literally minutes, okay? That's what containment buildings are for. That's why nobody died from Fukushima, and that's why a lot of people died from Chernobyl. They built the damn thing in a tool shed. All Western designs, they're built in containment buildings. They had 3 meltdowns, and they melted down, and they're inside this huge concrete structure, steel and concrete structure. You can stand right outside the concrete structure and not get a lethal dose. But as soon as you open that door and go inside, you can get a lethal dose. Get it? That's why nobody died. Yeah, that's right. No one died from Fukushima radiation. People still don't want to believe it. Okay, so I don't recommend, if you want to get it calibrated, hey, that's great. If you got the money, you think it's worth it, that's great. But literally, if the needle's moving at all due to radiation, the way you find that out is you go in your basement. If there's a nuclear bomb that went off, go in your basement somewhere underground, or where you're shielded very well from wherever the nuclear blast came from. If it's rating 0 and then you go up the stairs and outside, and all of a sudden it's reading 5 Roentgen or 50 Roentgen or 500 Roentgen, then get the hell out of there, because there's nothing I can legally own to make that needle move on that radiological survey meter. So anytime that needle's moving, regardless what scale you got it on, anytime that needle's moving, that's bad. Get the hell out of there. Get back underground. That's the best advice I can give you. As how much, the general guidelines are, if your exposure, your dose is 450 rads or Roentgens. In other words, if that needle is reading 450, and that would be 45 on the 100 scale, there's different scales. If you got 450 rads or Roentgens, I'm using these interchangeable even though they're not quite. If you got 450, then if you were exposed, that went back into a place where you were not exposed anymore, you would have a 50% chance of dying within 2 weeks. 450 is kind of the 50-50 point. If you get less than 100, less than 50, I can't remember the numbers now, something less than, say, 50, you're not going to have any visible effects whatsoever. If you get more than 100, let's say between 100 and 200, 150, you likely will get radiation poisoning, but you will survive. You will overcome it, more than likely. And anything, when you start getting up in the 200s, 300s, 400s, 500s, 600s, anything beyond 600 rads, you're going to get a lethal dose. If you get 600 Roentgens exposure, you will die within 2 weeks. And the thing doesn't go that high, but it's a calculation. You see, it's not a dosimeter. A dosimeter measures dose. With a radiologic survey, you're measuring rate. It says R per hour. So if you went outside and it showed 1 R per hour, that means if you stay out there for 1 hour, you get 1 Roentgen of exposure, or 1 rad of exposure over 1 hour time. If you had on the 100 time scale and it was reading 1, you would get 100 R for being outside for 1 hour. It's a calculation. It's the speedometer in your car. If you have a dosimeter, which I don't have one here available by hand either, even though I got more than 10,000 of them, a dosimeter will measure your rate. If you're wearing that dosimeter, and after 1 hour, it would read 100, whereas your meter will show 100 per hour. Your dosimeter is your odometer in your car. The survey meter is your speedometer. That's the big difference between the two. It's the best way I can describe it. Okay. Depending on the number of panels, you can still collect on a cloudy day. Well, let me see here. I've already answered some of these questions. I can't scroll up anymore. Depending on the number of panels, we're talking about solar panels now, you can still collect on a cloudy day, even in snowstorm. Well, not really, not a snowstorm. Cloudy, yes. Today it was cloudy here in Michigan. The highest I think I ever got was 850 watts for a brief period of time. And it was cloudy all day. 850 watts was the highest I got. This again is a 4,000 watt system. Snowstorm, no, I generally see 0 when it's snowing out. On a very overcast day, cloudy day, I'm only going to get about 100 watts out of the system that's supposedly 4,000 watts. So no, cloudy days, it's basically a complete write-off. If the sun peaks out here and there, you'll see it spike way up, and you'll get some, and then it'll go back down again. That's why solar is so undependable for the grid. It's a burden on the grid, not an asset. I know a lot of people don't like to hear that. PrEP did a test during a winter storm. No, I could easily just debunk that. You might be able to get some energy on a snowstorm, but it'd be so low, it'd be ridiculously low. Not anywhere near what it's rated at. Not anywhere near. Be like 1/100th of what it's rated at. Sorry to burst that bubble there. Next one here. If a train derails in your area, what should be your bug out procedures and equipment? I was thinking about seat covers, plastic blankets to prevent contamination of car's interior. Now you're talking about chemicals. I don't deal much with chemical. NBC, nuclear, biological, chemical, the military deals with. I do have some equipment for chemicals too, but I don't really sell those, don't really carry them, don't know enough about it. But basically, for chemicals, I was safety steward for my shop in a major steel mill in the U.S. And one of the things that the steel plant was extremely worried about, the management, is if there was ever a problem with the chlorine tanks that they had on site. that it would be a major problem if there was a fire or an explosion of those chlorine tanks, that people would die pretty quickly unless they could get them out. And unfortunately, the way this particular plant was situated, it was on a major water. It was on a lake. It was on Lake Michigan. There's a lot of steel plants on Lake Michigan. And there was only one exit, one road getting out of the plant. So if this tank would explode, the only hope anybody had is if the wind blew favorably, first of all, or they started swimming. Because if the road, there's no way you're getting out. Now, as far as prepping for something like this, if you were in that city of Ohio, whatever the name of the city was or whatever, and this happens all over the country where you have chemicals and toxic spills, the best I could say is a gas mask. And I used to sell gas masks, so I don't really have any gas masks because of the pandemic. I've sold thousands of gas masks during the pandemic and sort of wiped me out. So I don't really have a supply of gas masks anymore. And by the way, thanks people for the thumbs up. I think they say it helps the YouTube algorithm when I'm doing a live channel, when I have a high proportion of likes versus people that are actually viewing. So I appreciate that. A gas mask. When I lived on the road for more than a decade doing shows all around the country, literally all around the country. And one time I was doing a show in Tulsa. I didn't know what was going on at first. I was doing a show in Tulsa. I was sitting in a parking lot at the time, and the power went out. Electricity. Not in my step van, but the power went out. Oh, the lights all went out. Oh, so okay, they've lost power. But it's not stormy. It's not no tornadoes that I know of. It didn't seem to make a difference. Why the power go out? I didn't really know. And then they came back on, and the power went out again. What's going on here? I didn't really know. Now, what I found out later, after listening to the radio, there was a fire at a chemical plant near Tulsa. And they had literally purposely shut off the power to try to avoid having electricity have anything to do with sparking any additional fires or blowing up any tanks or whatever. They had literally purposely shut off the electricity. Now, chlorine is actually basic. You cannot smell chlorine at all. It's chemically, it has no scent. However, when it mixes with anything biological, then you can smell it. That's why you can smell bleach. But anyway, chlorine is odorless, believe it or not. But if I had sense of mind enough, and I started smelling chlorine all of a sudden, if I had sense enough mind, I could go in the back of the truck, grab a gas mask, put it on, and hide. Because if everybody else knew that around me that was dying, knew I had gas mask in there, it'd be a mob, an instantly mob, and I'd be killed for my gas mask. I don't know if I usually only had maybe on the shows, maybe 20 or 30 of them with me, so I could start throwing gas masks out the window to everybody to save people's lives. But then I ran out of gas masks. What's going to happen? They're going to come after me, thinking I got more. Give up your whole stock. I would literally have to hide, bend down in the truck, and wait for it to be all over, and people are all around me dying. That sounds terrible, but that's the reality of the situation. So gas masks would be the best thing. So if I'm stopping on the road, and if you're on the road and then you're in a big traffic jam and there's a railroad derailment up there, and all of a sudden this thing blows up and there's gases coming your way, what do? Get out and start running? You're probably not going to outrun the wind or the gases. You're probably going to have to put on a gas mask to sit there and hope for the best. Is your skin going to be blistered and all this, depending what the chemical is? Possibly. Primarily because you want to stop the fumes from coming in your eyes and your lungs and your nose, your mouth. That's your first thing. But a lot of other chemicals, the military has NBC suits, which are basically like raincoats, and you get rubber gloves, and you can seal them with tape and all that. If you're under attack, you don't have time to do any of that. You may have time to do it on a gas mask. You don't have, unless you have all the equipment ready. If you're an extreme prepper, you might have all that stuff ready. But so for chemicals, it's a whole different thing, because NBC, nuclear biological chemical. Nuclear is real easy. You know you've been attacked, and it's easy to detect, and it's easy to defend against. The biologicals, are near impossible. You don't know you're being attacked. You can't smell it, taste it, hear it, smell it, touch it. And by the time you realize you've been exposed, you may already come down with whatever it gave you, or you're dead. So unless you know you're being attacked, the gas mask doesn't help you there. Nothing helps you there, because you don't even know what's going on. The C, chemical is more detectable. A lot of times you can see it, feel it, taste it. And so you might be able to do something about it in time, maybe not, but gas mask would be your first choice. A gas mask, any gas mask will do. It can be a cheap Soviet one that I used to sell for 15 bucks, or it could be an expensive M50 that sells right now for probably in the neighborhood of 400 bucks. They're all going to protect you as long as it has what they call an NBC filter, nuclear biological chemical filter. It will do for nuclear biological chemical. Doesn't matter how cheap it is, as long as it seals good. Now, if you got a beard and you can't get a good seal, that's a problem. But if you get a good seal and you got the proper filter, and it's not so cloudy that it plugs that filter up right away, you can always replace filters while you're wearing it. Hold your breath, replace it, and start breathing again. But that isn't your primary concern. The primary concern is to have the gas mask and have a filter. If you want to really be a prepper, a good prepper, you probably should have a gas mask in your car and one at home. If you're worried about that. Now, I can't think of very many people in this country that have died due to a chemical leak. And so it may not be your primary concern. I try to do sensible prepping. I do a lot of prepping stuff on my channel, but I try to do sensible prepping. I don't suggest you go out and build a nuclear bunker. I don't suggest you, I'm trying to make prepping to be sensible. Because frankly, in this country, now if you lived in Bhopal, India, a gas mask obviously would have been a great thing to have back in the 80s? Did that happen? That chemical plant that killed thousands? So it could happen. I'm not saying it can't happen, but it hasn't happened. Not to any kind of major scale that most of us need to worry about. In fact, in this country, the preppers get mad at me for saying this kind of thing. In this country, we haven't really had a need to prepare in this country for over 100 years, 150 years. Really, truly and honestly, you could say things like, oh, Katrina, well, okay, Katrina. Katrina came over, didn't kill a lot of people immediately, but you knew you lived in an area that was prone to not only hurricanes, and you were warned, and you prone to flooding as well, since you're below damn sea level. How smart is that? So, and frankly, if you survived, and okay, if it's flooded, you're on your roof, okay, you could swim away and get onto dry land, and you could walk to Aunt Betsy's house in the next parish, and they got power, and you weren't in danger of dying. You see, you need to store food. You could literally walk to the next parish and go to Aunt Betsy's house. They have electricity, they have running water, they have hot running water, they have food, they have grocery stores are open. You see what I'm saying? The only thing where people, the Civil War, the U.S. Civil War, the 1860s, and if you lived in the South, those are the only people that I could really point to that really needed to prep, because the people were dying of starvation and things, and hunting all the deer, and they were in a bad state in the South during the Civil War. That's the kind of thing. If you're prepared for war, if you think war is going to come to our shores, then yes, you need to prep with food and probably protection too, not just food and water. Anyway, so I try to do sensible prepping. And here's another thing for all you preppers out there tonight, because a lot of my audience is preppers. And for those of you who think you might want to prep, well, keep this in mind. First of all, the national agencies, such as the Red Cross and the FEMA, okay, yeah, we can all laugh at FEMA, but their basic premise is have 2 weeks worth of storage. Food and water, candles, maybe batteries, 2 weeks. That's what FEMA recommends to the Red Cross. I think that's the latest recommendation. And you already have that. Even if you've never prepped at all, you already have that. How do you have, what are you talking about? I don't have any food. Well, look in your cupboards. You already have about 2 weeks of food in your cupboards right now. By the time you're going to want to eat the stuff out of your refrigerator first, because you may not have electricity, then your refrigerator, freezer, and then you start working on your cupboards. And yeah, you might be eating weird things at the end of the 2 weeks, but you still got some things to eat. What about water? You got something called a water heater. Now, unless you have the newer tankless water heaters, you've got 2 weeks of food stored in that water heater. Yeah, that water will be safe to drink, going at the bottom of the drain valve and getting some water out. And it's not quite as simple as that, because you have to exercise that valve. It could leak. If you open it up, it might not shut down. You need to put a hose on it to a higher elevation, because if that valve does leak, or it might be silted up, you should keep that valve clear. I did a whole other video about that. But you've got 2 weeks of water stored in your water heater, 30 gallons, 50 gallons, whatever you got. If you're careful with it, you can last 2 weeks on that. You won't die. You won't die without food anyway, but it's not comfortable not eating for 2 weeks. If you think something's going to last longer than 2 weeks, then you prepare more. You got more food stored, you got more water stored, you do things. Or even without trying to store water, because that's kind of a losing battle. Get a water filtration system, or a water treatment system, I should say, that will take care of viruses, protozoa, bacteria, all the nasties that could be, because most of us live in an area where we could walk a block or two and find a ditch or a lake or stream, river, some kind of water source. It won't be safe to drink just like that, but you can bring it back home and you can boil it. Rolling boil for 1 minute. Kill all viruses, bacteria, any of the biological nasties, it will kill. Rolling boil for 1 minute. It may look terrible, might have mud in it, but you can live off of that. If now it has gasoline in it or oils or some other chemical, then that boiling is not going to solve that. So you need another system for that. But if it's just surface water and there's no other kind of chemical contamination, you can boil that and you'll live. But anyway, rolling boil for 1 minute, or iodine, chlorine, or chlorine dioxide. I've done lots of videos on these topics. Iodine, chlorine, or chlorine dioxide to treat the water, to kill those biologicals in there. If you want to filter it because of the dirt, it doesn't look so good, okay, you can do that. You can get something like a Berkey or Aqua Rain or a ProPur, but those do not stop viruses. Be very clear on this. The CDC is very clear on this. A direct quote from the CDC is, filtration is not effective in removing a virus. And we all know a little bit more about viruses now because of the corny virus, but you can't filter it out. A virus measures between 0.005 and 0.3 microns. The Berkey only filters the 0.9 microns. The Aqua Rain only filters the 0.3 microns. The ProPur only filters the 0.3 microns. The virus is smaller than that. So get over your nonsense you've been fed about some company putting out a filter. Again, the quote from the CDC is, filtration is not effective in removing a virus. Period. You need to kill it somehow. Rolling boil, iodine, chlorine, chlorine dioxide. That's what you need. Okay, so I've been all over the place. Some people are staying with me here. I've been up and down, just hovering around a dozen. Let's see here. Thanks for keeping it real. No idea where even came from. I'm not sure. I'd have to go back to find out what Starless Mystery was talking about. 4 inches, about 4 inches. Don't know what she was talking about. I think it's a she. I can get higher radiation readings in an airplane than you got on a trip. Yes, you can stand right next to the containment building of Fukushima with a Geiger counter, and you're going to measure a hell of a lot more radiation being in an airplane, a commercial aircraft, transcontinental aircraft flight. Get a lot more radiation. How can you get radiation? Cosmic rays. Comes from space. The higher altitude you get, the more cosmic rays you're getting. I did radiation testing in Colorado, was a good example. If I go to a city called Colorado Springs, and I tested, they're at about 5,000 feet elevation, and I'm getting about twice as much radiation as I would get if I was, let's say, on the coast in California or the coast in Mexico at sea level. I'm getting about twice the amount of normal background radiation. It's because you got less atmosphere above you. And just not very many miles away, 10 miles away, if I go to Pikes Peak, it's about twice that. I think they're at about 14,000 feet or something. It's more than twice the elevation of what Colorado Springs is. And I'm getting twice yet the radiation being at that altitude. And if you're in an airplane at 30,000 feet, 40,000 feet, you're getting a lot more radiation. It's natural. And if you look at the statistics for pilots and airline stewardesses and people that live up there a lot of their lives, spend a lot of time up there, they don't have an increased cancer rate. Sorry. I like to scream about cancer and birth defects and on and on about how bad radiation is. All radiation is bad, they say. A lot of people think, all radiation is bad, really? Every single thing on this planet has a radioactive signature. This pen is radioactive. This marker is radioactive. I'm in kind of an office situation here. This piece of paper has some radioactivity in it. It's not dangerous to us because it's a small amount. And they say, all radiation is bad. Well, think about this, folks. If all radiation is bad, there would be no life on this planet whatsoever. How's that, you say? Well, this Earth is kind of powered by nuclear fusion from something we call a sun. Take away that sun and see how long any of us live. Yes, radiation is absolutely necessary. Yes, that's a form of radiation. In fact, there's not only cosmic rays that come from space, but there's also gamma rays and X-rays. We're bombarded with all sorts of radiation, but our atmosphere blocks most of that, and our life has adapted to live to that amount of radiation. Period. People, if you're anti-nuke for any reason, it's because you've been lied to all your life. You just need to study any part of it, and you're going to find out, well, why the hell was I anti-nuke? Because there's absolutely no reason for you to be anti-nuke. Sorry. I don't want to make a lot of people mad. And frankly, I would expect to start seeing trolls show up. If my channel is big and I get hundreds or thousands of people watching my live streams, that I don't normally do anyway, the trolls would be coming out of the woodwork. Apparently nobody has spotted me here yet that I'm on live, the people that hate me. Because I got a lot of people that subscribe to my channel that think I'm full of crap about radiation, and they'd love to come on and try to cause trouble. Whatever, come at it with me. We'll send you the door packing with your ass in your hands. I mean, literally. I can post links here, and you could look it up for you. I could back up everything I say immediately if I can find it quick enough to put it right on the chat as a link. Let's see here. Let's see what else. Are the Chinese-made Geiger counters any good? Well, frankly, all the modern ones are Chinese-made anyway. So that's, yeah. I do have one model that I sell on my website. I'm not trying to promote. I don't try to promote anything I do because you don't really need a Geiger counter. Because if you're buying a Geiger counter and you think you're a prepper, you're not a prepper. First of all, you're buying it in response to some fear, so you're not really preparing. You're reacting. Because when I saw the sales increase when Putin starts mentioning nuclear war, my sales jump up. I'm telling everybody, no, you don't need a survey meter. You don't need a Geiger counter. But anyway, if you want a Geiger counter, you want a toy. So if you buy a toy from China, what difference does it make? Catch my drift? Because nothing you're going to measure with a Geiger counter is going to kill you. Unless you're exposed a long time or you eat it or something. Geiger counters don't measure high enough to be concerned about long term. For short term. Long term, they might, depending on how much the radiation is. So, yeah, the ones I have are Chinese. In fact, I used to do shows. I did shows for about 10 years before I had anything at my table that was even made in China. It's hard to do that. With radiation protection equipment, any of the modern equipment is generally made in China. So, yeah, sorry, that's the reality of how the globalists have pushed us into these days. Let's see. Get higher radiation in the airplane, did that. Chinese made. My concern is survey meter reading 0 rad when in fact it is 1 or 2 rad. Well, here's what you do if you have a survey meter. I know the type of survey meter you're talking about. You're either talking about a CDV 717 or a CDV 715. Maybe a CDV 720, but I generally don't sell 720s. Anyway, you're looking at a survey meter that has a knob that adjusts. What you do is you go in your basement or whatever you have and set it up to where it's reading 0. You're zeroing it out like the instructions tell you to. Then you go upstairs with it. If the needle starts moving, here's what I'm saying. If the needle starts moving, that means you've got a lot of radiation. And I don't care how accurate that is. You got enough radiation where you need to get the hell out of there, in my opinion. Now, if it's only 1 rad, yeah, you could stay outside for 200 hours and probably not die, certainly not die. Well, 150 hours and not die at 1 rad, 1 Roentgen. Are you going to stay out that long? Doesn't make any sense to do that, but okay. If it's only reading 1, that's a relatively low amount. I wouldn't want to be exposed to 1 rad for a long time. I think if you get exposed to, is it 5 rads in your lifetime from working in a nuclear power plant, you get kicked off the job for good. So that's the kind of levels we're talking about. So if it's reading anything, I would consider that bad. Now, if you're having trouble getting it to read to 0 out, you just have to, you could fake it by zeroing it out an incorrect by using that knob. I want to do a program, and I haven't got a good response yet from KI4U, who know a lot more about these devices than I do. They fix them and they know them in and out. Trying to get involved with them to do a good informational show about how to help yourself figure out what's wrong with your units or what the readings show or what we should be worried about. The problem is you're not going to have YouTube when there's a problem. The power will probably be out and YouTube will be out too. No internet. Let's see what else we have here. Concern survey. Seems to be on a war. Let me scroll down here. Not too many making comments, but I'm keeping up barely. The seems to be a war on man at this point. Smart meters are going to be smart for many. Smart meters for many. Are you talking about electric meters? I've done lots of radiation testing on smart meters. I've done a lot of stuff on my show, folks. No, I'm not concerned about smart meters. If that's what he's talking about, but I don't know what he's talking about. You're talking about AI? I'm not sure what he's talking about. Anyway, I can't really comment because I don't know what he's talking about. Could live off of tree roaches. Okay, good for you. I don't want that. I'd rather have something I more call food. So I'd rather not live off tree roaches. What about zeolites for killing viruses? Zeolites for killing viruses. Zeolites, yeah. I don't know that there's any. I used to sell a device called the Aqua Pail and the Aqua Brick, and that was a zeolite-based design. The company stopped making them. I sold out of those. You might still be able to find signs of them on the website, but I've been on them for years. Yes. Now, see, that's the difference now. When that quote I gave you from the CDC, which says, filtration is not effective in removing a virus. The zeolite does more than just filter. In fact, it goes through so quick, it lets virtually everything through. But what it does is, what the zeolite-based products do is, the zeolite is, visibly, it looks kind of like cat litter. It's a mineral that's put in there, and if you look under a microscope, it's got a lot of sharp edges. It's like knives. So it slices up the membrane of bacteria, it kills viruses as it goes through. The maze of the sharp knives it goes through, it slices them up, and that's said what kills them. But it doesn't really filter them out. In other words, the bacteria and viruses will get through; they'll just be dead, right? The same thing if you boil the water. If you boil them, they'll still be there, but they'll be dead. The filters pretend to be able to filter them out. Now, with a filter, you can filter out bacteria, usually not a problem. The Berkey, the Proper, the Aquarain, all those ceramic-based filters. If you want a cheap one, if you want an impromptu one, get a clay flower pot. Plug up that middle hole, fill it with water, have a catch basin so when it drips through, it'll soak through the clay. And that'll do about the same thing that the Berkey, the Aquarain, and the Proper do. And that'll probably do virus. It'll do bacteria, but it won't do viruses because the clay pots are porous. Now, I don't know if there's any other chemicals in the clay that would be not good to drink, and I'm not sure. But anyway, in an emergency, you could get a clay pot and filter through that clay pot and use that as a filter. But you still got to do something for the viruses regardless. Rolling boil for 1 minute. Iodine, chlorine dioxide. And I get people saying, well, that's what the CDC said. Okay, then check what Zimbabwe says with their health department, or Germany, or whatever. They all say basically the same thing. You want to complain about the CDC. Come on, give me a break. I'm trying to be real here. This is sensible prepping advice. This is not some conspiracy laden, because if you watch all these prepper channels, they're all fear-based. Got to get gold and silver right away. Just get rid of all your dollars, and someday that may happen. But it hasn't happened in more than 100 years, has it? You see what I'm saying? There's a sensible way to prep. Or they'll tell you about nuclear war. World War III is coming. We're all going to die. And then they ramp up the fear. Whatever. All the prepper channels are fear-based. Fear-mongering. I guess the audience that wants that stuff. I have a certain audience for preppers too. But I don't go down that route. Yes, some of these things can happen that the preppers are concerned about. Yes, we could have a nuclear bomb go off. Yes, we could have a nuclear power plant accident. Yes, we could have a societal collapse or the dollar collapse, or we could have an EMP that shuts the grid down. That's your biggest problem is prep for right there, that none of you are prepared for, is the grid going down for more than a year. None of us are prepared for that. We're addicted to electricity. And about 90% of us will die. Now, that may sound like fear-mongering, and in a way it is, but this is what a government study showed. If the power was out for a year, about 90% of us would be dead for a year. Why would 90% of us be dead? It's not because we'd be killing each other for food or whatever. It's because sanitation. Not having clean water to drink. Waterborne diseases. No sanitary. You've got no trash pickup. You got no garbage disposals. You got no sewage treatment plants. You got raw sewage running down the streets. That's why 90% of us will be dead after a year without electricity. Something to think about. And how many preppers were prepared for the corny virus? How many of you? None of you. I had about a half a pallet of flu pandemic kits, which sold very quickly at a very high price. And then I had more than 1,000 gas masks, and didn't really need a gas mask for this, but people believed they did. And so anyway, I was semi-prepared. But what would you need to be prepared for of another pandemic like that? We kind of know now. The masks, sanitation, or the what do you call it? The sanitary, the wipes, the wipes and or the liquid. What do they call it? I lost it here for a second. But anyway, you know what I'm talking. Sanitizer, because the flu pandemic kids had those. And what, maybe toilet paper, paper towels, maybe paper plates, because are you going to be able to do your dishes? If the grid goes down along with it, you got a lot of other things to worry about. But pandemic is one thing that was kind of easy to prepare for, to a certain extent. But what can we really do? Luckily, this pandemic wasn't much. It was not much. When you look what happened 100 years ago with the Spanish flu, this pandemic was nothing. But the press wanted to make sure it was a big deal, and that we locked the whole societies down for months, years at a time, even. Okay, so zeolites, yeah, zeolites. I don't know if there's a zeolite-based product. The company that I had the product for, they stopped making it because there's a limited supply, and the mine that they were getting it from had a major contract from the government for some reason, and basically took away their supply. They couldn't supply them anymore, and that's why the company started making them. No other reason that I know of. Do you have a video on Faraday cages? Not really. I've talked about them. Faraday cages, for those of you who don't know what this person's talking about, Faraday cages are generally a metal box that you can put things in, electronics in, to maybe prevent them from being, this is a Bluetooth type speaker. Anything that has a computer chip is probably vulnerable to an EMP attack. An EMP attack is electromagnetic pulse. It can come from either nature or man. In 1859, if we had a Carrington event that we had in 1859 of CME, or a corona mass ejection, a solar flare from the sun, it's likely that everything with a computer in it could be fried, unless it's in a Faraday cage. Faraday cage is a metal box basically that protects from electromagnetic radiation. They can also come from an EMP from a nuclear detonation. They will protect the electronics inside. So then when the EMP is over, you take it out and your electronic device works. The big thing about that I have to caution people on, and again, being a sensible prepper, what are you putting in that box that you're going to absolutely need after an EMP is over with? Are you putting a computer in there? Why is that? Do you have internet? Are you putting a radio in there? Why is that? Are there any? Now, hopefully, a radio is a good thing to actually put in those, especially a wind-up radio. Wind-up, not electricity, because at some point, but not just a radio, but a shortwave radio. Because hams, I've done a lot of ham shows in my time. Hams will know how to get on the air before anybody else. All of your AM and FM stations will likely be down. No other information available. If you want communications, 2 walkie-talkies might be a good thing to put in a Faraday cage. One and your partner, and you're communicating on your land or whatever. You have some communication back and forth. Your cell phone's not going to work. You're going to put your cell phone in there? Why? The tower's not going to work. You're not going to have it. Forget about it. Cell phone, computers, internet, anything internet-based, anything computer-based. Get a old-style transistor radio, especially a shortwave type that has no computers would be ideal, because you might have another EMP that comes on when you're using it, and then your device doesn't work anymore. But you got to have batteries or solar panels or something. You're going to put solar panels in there. You're going to put batteries in there. You're going to put an inverter in there for your solar system. How big is this box going to be? You're going to put your car in there. You're going to put your microwave oven in there? Why? Your toaster? Things that have computers in it nowadays, your refrigerator? How big is this box going to be? You see what I'm saying? It's not practical. And then you're not going to be able to operate these things anyway because you're not going to have electricity. So a Faraday cage is kind of pointless. Not only that, but I've talked to many people all around the country that are familiar, much more knowledgeable about the topic than I am. And I'm getting mixed messages. I'm getting messages back and forth whether or not an EMP is going to destroy things or not. I'm talking military guys off the record. Some saying that, yeah, we know that we're going to be struck, so we just start replacing components. Pulling out those boards, the boards, and putting in new boards that we have shielded. And a lot of things are EMP shielded. That's how much we don't really know, because it's a lot of it's theoretical. We haven't had much testing. The only real testing we had was done in the 50s or 60s, where the EMP was destroying some electronics that was close enough to be destroyed by the EMP of the nuclear detonation. The EMP doesn't kill anybody. The one in 1859 didn't kill anybody, but if it doesn't kill anybody right away. You'll start seeing the aurora borealis in Tennessee and in Mexico, whatever. That's the sign that you've been hit by an electromagnetic pulse, a solar flare that would be big enough. If you saw that in Colorado, or you saw that in Florida, you would know that you had a solar flare that could have damaged a lot of things. So what are you going to put that's the point. You could put them in bags, there's supposed bags, but frankly, I've tested those. And, take one of those so-called EMP bags, take 2 probes from a meter, an ohm meter that tests continuity, stick it in the 2 points in the bag, even if they're really close. They don't conduct electricity. Those bags are made of plastic. They have some kind of aluminum, luminized whatever in them. They don't conduct electricity at all. I've tested this. I don't know if those work. Some people say that I talk to, they do. Of course, people that sell it say they do. An ammo can. Some people say but they say an ammo can, since it has that gasket, that's where the electromagnetic radiation come in. It has to be metal to metal. They say one of the simplest, fairly large Faraday cages you can make is a metal garbage can with a metal lid, and where you seal the lid with a aluminized tape. You can get the metal tape from supply houses that sell anything dealing with ductwork for HVAC guys. Some say, and then whatever you have in there can't be touching the sides of it. It's got to be wrapped in plastic bubble wrap or something, so it's not touching the sides of that garbage can. This is some of the things that have been said. There's so much false information or misleading information out there that I can't tell you for sure what the right thing to do is. But the truth of the matter is, about the only thing you would possibly even think about putting in a Faraday cage would be a wind-up shortwave radio, if Beijing still makes those, and that's a company in South Africa, and 2 walkie-talkies, analog based. That would be my best suggestion to you. But frankly, those devices I just mentioned that don't have computer chips might survive an EMP anyway, even without the Faraday cage. You see, but the key is you won't have electricity when there's something that disrupts the supply there. Some people say, well, I got a 57 Chevy. I don't have any computers on my 57 Chevy. I'll be able to go anywhere I want. No, you're stupid. Your 57 Chevy may run, but are the roads going to be passable? There's going to be so many dead cars on the road. And you'll also have gangs that might be pushing dead cars, blocking roads. And then you come up and the road's blocked ahead and you see everybody over there that have shotguns. They say, uh-oh, better get the hell out of there. And you look in your rearview mirror and you got people pushing dead cars up behind you too. And you're gang bait. So no, you aren't going anywhere in your 57 Chevy. You got to get over that. If everybody's car is dead, you are dead too if you think you're going anywhere in that 57 Chevy. Again, reality check here, the preppers don't want to tell you. They want to tell you all this other nonsense, how you're going to be able to go there, here, and there. No, if you're the only one on the road, you're dead. You're gang bait. You're better off trying to figure out a way to stay put and survive whatever's happening. So, don't really have a specific video on Faraday cages. There's a lot of channels that do. There's one channel in particular. Somebody calls him, I think, the EMP doctor. He has a lot of information about Faraday cages and protecting from EMP. But I've also heard people, and I'm saying, look at the comments section. It's one way you can kind of eye these people out sometimes. And you get people that maybe are electrical engineers and they start making comments, say, no, you're wrong, da 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 da. Or go to the electrical engineers channels and see what they say. People that would really know about this. Maybe they're not trying to sell you something like the EMP doctor is. See? I'm not saying the EMP doctor is wrong, but he's trying to sell you something. I'm not selling anything on my channel. Well, I do have some websites where I sell something, but you won't find me promoting it here. I don't have anything on my channel I don't have a monetized channel. I don't have any affiliate links. I don't have any way of making a donation. I don't have any commercial on my channel, and I don't promote what I sell. And in fact, a lot of times, especially the radiation stuff that I sell, I advise people against it. You don't need that stuff. So you need to find somebody like that. Somebody who's not trying to sell you something when they're talking about some of these topics that we're talking about here. Let's see. I have a radium clock dials, but I'm concerned about the radon gas that they emit. Do you have any advice to contain that radon gas? Well, I've been at the shows that I did. Since the pandemic, I haven't done many shows. My next show wasn't until the late summer in Atlanta. Because I stopped doing most of them. Because the pandemic, they stopped anyway. And I got so many sales online that I didn't need to go to doing shows anymore. But I have, at my table, I got radium, I got uranium, I got thorium, I got polonium, I got americium, I have tritium, I got trinitite. I've got just about anything radioactive you could ever think about. I've got at my table, and I live with this in my van. Right? I'm not concerned about this stuff at all. It's very low levels. Again, we're being bombarded with all sorts of things that are radioactive. Everything on this planet is radioactive. You're radioactive. Your dog's radioactive. That tree in your front yard is radioactive. You get radon gas from the ground. You get tritium from space, from the atmosphere. It's everywhere. If you're worried about a little radon coming off a radium clock, now I wouldn't necessarily recommend I sleep with it under my pillow, okay? I wouldn't have any problem having it next to my bed, but you'll notice that radium clock, because it was built in the 60s, is probably the latest radium clocks that were ever built in this country. You got an antique anyway. It's from the 50s and 60s. It doesn't glow anymore, if you hadn't noticed. Your radium clocks and watches, and they don't glow anymore. It loses a lot of its radioactivity after time. It's still radioactive, but it's probably not going to hurt you being next to you. I go to antique the military vehicle shows that I do. They got in the airplanes, they got radium dials in the instrument cluster. Now those planes are all antiques and they don't fly them much anymore, and it's not a big deal. They get more radiation probably from being up at that altitude in that airplane than they would from the radium dial clocks in front of them. If you've ever measured that, the radium, it goes off by the inverse square law, it goes off dramatically. The farther you get away from it, the radiation drops off dramatically. If I put the Geiger counter right up to that radium dial clock through the glass, it's got a plastic cover or a glass cover, it'll measure pretty high. If I go a foot away from it, you can hardly tell it anymore. If I go 3 feet away from it, it's like background radiation. You don't even measure it anymore. You see what I'm saying? So if you have it next to you on your bedside, it's not a concern, really. I don't think. Yes, it's got some radiation in it. Does it produce radon gas? I'd have to look at the specs on that, whether it's radon, whether it's alpha, beta, gamma. Because if it's alpha radiation, the clock face itself, the glass will block the alpha unless it leaks. If you're really concerned about it, seal it up with caulking, and then you're not going to get any alpha radiation off it at all because it won't go through that glass, that plastic cover. Got me? So a watch, you're probably not getting any alpha on it. Yeah, you might get a tiny bit coming out of the little wind-up hole or something where it's not airtight. But if you got a waterproof radium dial watch, you're not getting any alpha out of it. Probably not any beta either, because the beta probably isn't going to be able to go through that glass very easily. Gamma, though, yes. Gamma will go through it, because you can't block the gamma the same way you can block alpha and beta. Alpha and beta is a particle. Gamma is a ray. That's why it's so important if you want to prepare for nuclear war, you prepare with gamma in mind. Not alpha and beta so much. They're not as dangerous, not nearly as dangerous as the gamma rays. Gamma rays will kill you. The alpha and beta could kill you long term, but you're not going to get enough of it to kill you more than likely. The rays emitting from the site of a detonation site is gamma rays and X-rays, but gamma is what we're most concerned about. To block it, you need mass. That's why we went underground. The dust that comes down and drops down later is what we call fallout. And there could be some gamma emitters. It won't be very much. The bigger danger there is with the fallout is the beta radiation. And if the dust falls on the roof of your house and it doesn't come in your house, no danger from beta whatsoever. The beta comes in through air leaks, and so you will get some beta. But if it's up on your roof, no concern until you go up on your roof and start getting it on your clothing and all that, and you come inside and you wash off. Nuclear preparedness is very simple, folks, and you don't need expensive bunkers or expensive detection equipment. It's very easy to protect yourself from nuclear, but they've got you believing you're all going to die. When there's a nuclear detonation somewhere near you, you're going to wake up the next morning and find out you're alive and wonder what the hell to do next because you don't have any clue. Even though it's easy to do to protect yourself, you won't have any clue because you didn't study. You didn't get a book. Remember paper books? Get one of those things. One called Nuclear War Survival Skills. Paper. Remember paper? Don't get it on a computer disk because it's not going to be any use for you if it's on a flash drive. Get a paper book. Okay. So anyway, I could talk about a lot of these topics for a long time, as you can see, and I don't have any notes in front of me or anything. I'm doing this all off the top of my head. I know my topics. So that was the last question. I've been on the air probably an hour now. How long have I been on the air here? Oh, hour and a half. Been on the air an hour and a half here now on YouTube. I probably will leave this posted this time. The other times I wasn't as prepared. Well, I had audio problems last time, so I just deleted them. But anyway, this one probably is going to come out good. I think there's a lot of good information people may be able to gather from it if they're willing to sit through an hour and a half. But I'll probably go ahead and stop now because there's no more comments. Been on long enough. I thank everybody for showing up. I may pop in here or there. Unless I get a lot of participation, a lot of interest, I probably won't have a regular schedule. Sorry, folks. It's going to be off the cuff. If you missed the live one, you couldn't ask a question, you can always go in the comment section of this one or any other show that I have ever done on YouTube and ask a question I can try to answer for you. I do read all the comments. Since I don't have a huge channel, I can still do that. People who have a million viewers can't answer their own comments because it would be too overwhelming. I used to get hundreds of comments a day back when YouTube was actually favorable to me a little bit, but they aren't favorable to me now. They demonize me, they put me down, and so now I only get a few comments a day on my channel. Sometimes none a day. Oh, so anyway, that's one of the reasons my channel hasn't grown and I don't put much effort into it anymore because YouTube doesn't like me. So why should I bother with them? I may try to do something on Rumble someday. I don't know. I'm more interested in being on Rumble to show those clowns who think they're going to escape and think they're going to get a new audience to show that you can't escape the lies. I'm gonna rat you out on that medium too. That's why I started a Rumble channel yesterday. I don't have any videos on Rumble, so don't even go there. Don't even try to find me because I can't be found yet. And the one that was going there to escape, because I have a channel specifically aimed at those liars about Fukushima, the fearmongers that are scamming you for money. And his name is directly in the title of it. The two of names directly in the title of that channel. So I was going to start another channel there. These guys need to be put out of business. They're ruining people's minds and destroying their wallets too in the same process. So thank you for everybody who joined me. I'm going to end it now. Thanks everybody for watching. Maybe I'll show up again sometime live. Just have to keep watching the channel. If you subscribe and like, and I think you do the notification things, you can get notified. And if you're available, you can catch me live. Otherwise, thanks for watching. I'm going to end it now. Goodbye.